Hey guys, for today's video, I'd like to discuss the changes that were done to Gandalf's character between the Lord of the Rings books and the films. So, I'll be starting by talking about changes in his plotline, and not about his character. Now as always, I'll be talking about changes, and if some details were omitted, it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't happen, they just weren't shown, so I'll be leaving these out. So for the start of the movies, they're actually kept quite true to the books. There aren't many significant changes. And I think the first one comes when Gandalf starts suspecting about the ring and he'll want to learn more. And in the films he goes directly to Minas Tirith to look up, to read in the scrolls in the library, to try and maybe piece together something. And he eventually learns the story of Isildur, etc. And this is different from the books, because in the books he actually rounds up Aragorn, and together they go look for Gollum to get his story, since he knew that Bilbo got the ring from Gollum, and by saying where Gollum actually got it from, he might be able to piece the puzzle together. Now at this point he learns that Gollum was in fact tortured by Sauron, and this causes him to worry even more, and this in turn leads him to go to Minas Tirith and read about the ring. Now after his increasing suspicions that the ring is in fact the One Ring, Gandalf returns to Hobbiton, and he tells Frodo to put the ring in the fire, and this actually confirms it. Now in the films, this almost dements him, that he appears anxious, nervous, he doesn't know what to do, extremely flustered. The way he grabs Frodo, asking him if the ring is safe and secret, or when he pulls Sam from the window after hearing a noise outside, it just shows that he's extremely anxious, afraid, and extremely nervous, that he's almost panicking. And this is actually really different from the books, because in the books, once he finds out, he becomes very quiet, stern, concerned, and you get the impression that this guy knows what to do, that there's an aura of leadership, of control, and that at the back of his mind he's formulating a plan, or at least a general idea of what he should do. So now immediately after this, Gandalf tells Frodo that he's going to go to talk to Saruman, because Saruman is wise and he's the leader of the White Council, a council which Gandalf was part of. And this is actually different from the books, because in the books, Gandalf goes off on an errand, and on this errand he meets Radagast the Brown, who was a fellow wizard. And Radagast told him that Saruman said that the Nazgûl were afoot and active again, and that Saruman wished to speak to Gandalf, which causes Gandalf to go to Orthanc, since Saruman lived there. So following this, Gandalf does indeed speak to Saruman, and in the films he tells him about the ring, that it's been found, that it's in Hobbiton in the hands of a hobbit. And this is actually kept out, it's not in the books, because in the books he doesn't mention it, he keeps it very ambiguous, and he doesn't talk about the ring at all. And in fact, Saruman only knows that the ring's been found because he'd have deducted it from other sources. And I think this is because in the books, Gandalf is more suspicious and distrusting towards Saruman. So soon after this, Saruman reveals his true colors, that he's actually aligned with Sauron, and he tries to encourage Gandalf to join him, which Gandalf obviously declines. And then, in the films, they have a wizard duel of sorts where they blast each other about, use their staffs, all that wizard things. But this doesn't happen in the books, because in the books, Gandalf, he knows that he's surrounded by Saruman's minions, he knows Saruman is more powerful than him, and he chooses to go along peacefully. And yeah, maybe he'll manage to escape later on. Now once Gandalf is locked on top of Orthanc, there's a small change from the books to the films in the way he escapes, because in the films he seems to talk to a moth, which passes on a message to Gwaihir, the Lord of the Eagles. And in the books, Gwaihir saves him also, but instead of being sent or contacted by a moth, he's actually sent by Radagast, who asks him to check on Gandalf to see if he's still okay. Now actually after this, it's a while till there's a significant change to Gandalf, and I think the next one is once the Fellowship has formed and they're deciding where to go. And Gandalf, at the start, he wanted to go through Moria actually, and this has changed because in the books he seems to want to avoid it, and he'd rather choose the mountain pass instead, Caradhras. Also, in the films, it's at least implied that he knew about the Balrog, to a certain, that there's Saruman talking over it, and Gandalf seems to recall that the Balrog is present in Moria, while in the books he has no idea that it's there. So after this, there's a small change I'd like to talk about before they enter Moria, when they're actually trying to open the door. And if you can recall, there is a password and they had to find it. And in the films, Frodo guesses the password after asking Gandalf the Elvish word for friend. And this happens slightly different in the books, because in the books Gandalf actually guesses it, and he picks up upon it once he hears Merry pass a comment which helped spark the chain of thought for the password. So now we're at the very iconic Balrog fight, and this change actually causes quite a few questions among fans, because in the films, once Gandalf drops the Balrog lashes onto his cloak with his whip and pulls Gandalf down, though Gandalf manages to hold on. But instead of pulling himself up, he chooses to let go and tell the Fellowship, "Fly, you fools," so they basically can run away and carry on without him. And many people ask, why didn't he just pull himself up? And this is explained more clearly in the books, because in the books, the Balrog's whip does pull him down, but it doesn't let go. And in fact, Gandalf falls immediately, and as he's falling, he shouts to them to move on. And I can understand why they didn't do it this way in the films, because having Gandalf fall down and shout, "Fly, you fools," it might have appeared comical, and for such a dramatic part, it might have diminished or lost the effect it had. So now, between the last two films, there are only two changes I think are significant enough to talk about. And the first happens in the second film, when Gandalf goes off to find Éomer to get reinforcements at the Battle of Helm's Deep. And this has changed because in the books, Éomer is actually already present at Helm's Deep, that he wasn't exiled, he was merely jailed by Théoden. And Gandalf in fact went to fetch Erkenbrand, who was a leader of the Rohirrim of the Westfold, and these eventually were the reinforcements at Helm's Deep. So the other change I'd like to talk about actually happens in the third film, at the Battle of Minas Tirith. Because in the films during this battle, Gandalf faces off against the Witch King, and he's in fact overpowered by the Witch King, who breaks his staff and is about to attack him, but is stopped because the Rohirrim arrive. And this is different from the book, because in the book, though they are technically faced off against each other, since Gandalf is leading the forces of Gondor while the Witch King is leading the forces of Sauron, they never actually confront or fight each other on the battlefield. So now I'm going to talk about changes to Gandalf's character. So in the films he's a lot happier, a lot friendlier, a lot more human and closer to the Fellowship, while in the films he's very distant, stern, and he has an aura of mystery about him which makes you feel as if he's more than human, which he actually is. He also has much more faith in Frodo in the books, while in the films he seems to doubt his decision to send Frodo, or that there wasn't much hope to it. His power level was also reduced in the films, because in the books he actually uses magic sometimes, fire, and actually in the battle for Minas Tirith, when they thought they were going to lose, he was thinking of one last spell to use to do as much damage as he can to the enemy. I think the only two times we actually see him doing any magic in the films are during his fight with Saruman, and when he uses light to ward away the Nazgul in the third film. I think that more or less covers the significant changes. However, if you felt I left any out or have any questions or discussions about these, feel free to leave a comment below. As always, I hope you enjoyed it and that you're enjoying this series. Any tips, advice, or feedback in general is very appreciated. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of this type, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks as always.